Gym style has always been a struggle for me, and I think it's based off of two different things. One is that regardless of who you are, the first time that you go into a gym and work out, you're most likely going to feel subconscious. It doesn't matter how big you are, how skinny you are, how fat or muscular or anything else, there's always going to be this sense of, what do I do here? And do I belong here? And what are other people going to think? And there's just an element of self-consciousness that comes in regardless of how awesome or inviting or anything else the actual atmosphere at your gym is. The second component is that the stereotype about gyms being aesthetically competitive places, that stereotype exists for a reason, and that's because gyms are. Now, a lot of times we think about the aesthetic competitiveness as far as your body and the way that you're built. You've got the guys and girls who very obviously put in a lot of time and a lot of effort, and their bodies reflect that, versus those who clearly don't put in the same amount of effort or don't have the same hormonal balance or anything else. And there's a certain amount of self-consciousness or pride or ego or whatever it may be that comes with that, but it doesn't just exist within our bodies, it also exists within what we wear. And if you don't know what I mean, think about the difference between the way that people dress if you go into a CrossFit box versus if you go to a powerlifting meet versus if you go to your traditional like a Gold's Gym and you're there with a bunch of bodybuilders versus if you're at a marathon. I mean, these are all people who are in shape and they are working towards getting in shape, but they're doing it in different ways and they all dress very, very differently. And if you don't think that that matters or that impacts your ability to work out, then I would challenge you to go to a powerlifting meet dressed like a marathoner, or go to a CrossFit box dressed like a bodybuilder, or interchange any of those other variables. And it will affect not only the way that other people treat you there, but it will impact your own internal presence, how you view yourself, and how you feel you belong or don't belong when you are there. Thankfully, it doesn't have to be something that's totally just out there and random, and you don't have to just kind of like pick and choose and try and hope you get lucky and maybe figure out a style that works for you. There is an actual deliberate approach you can take. There's a formula that you can follow in order to get your gym style, just like any other component of your style, to how you want it to be and to look the way that you want it to. That's the process I've been through. That's what I want to talk to you guys about today. So you want to look at these other things that we've talked about in other videos. You want to look at your archetype. Are you rugged, refined, rakish? That's going to affect the way that you dress when you're at the gym. You want to look at your tribe. That's what we were talking about when it comes to things like CrossFit versus marathon racers, or they are different tribes, and those tribes have different uniforms and different signals of being within that group or even status within that group based on the way that you dress and the clothing that you wear, and you want to factor that in. You want to include your own personal taste. You want to include how much money you want to spend, how much effort you want to put into it, how big of a wardrobe you want, all of these other variables. There's a ton to look at. And so with this Fit Check series, as I talk to you about my own style evolution, I want to tell you about what the variables were, what the necessities were for me as I went through this process of finding my own gym style, and then tell you what the solution was that I found that works for me. So let me tell you what those variables are. The first thing for me from an aesthetic perspective is it needed to be tribally neutral. I needed to have clothing that did not look like I belong to a certain group of gym goers, because I don't. I've not earned the right to call myself a CrossFitter or a powerlifter or a bodybuilder or a boxer or any other thing, any other form of athlete. I haven't. And at some point I probably will. And at that point, my gym style will start to evolve to reflect that tribalism more. But for now, I don't. And I do not want to look like I believe that I do when I don't. And so I wanted something that would be tribally and culturally neutral. Second component is it has to be functional. That's an obvious one, right? I mean, you're going to the gym, you're moving your body, you're working out, and your clothing needs to enhance that, not impede upon it. That's why you don't go lift weights in a three-piece suit, right? I mean, yeah, you could argue that it looks good, but from a functional perspective, the way that that garment is designed is it will impinge upon your ability to properly do squats or deadlifts or even bench press or anything else. You don't go lift weights in a suit. Function and how it helps with your performance of your tasks at the gym is crucial. Now, kind of a kid brother to function is comfort, because comfort matters. Comfort, it again can affect your ability to either get better at what you're doing in the gym, or it can make it harder to do that. Little things like how breathable the fabric is, or whether or not it wicks away sweat, or if it limits your range of motion, or if you just feel like it's too tight or too loose or anything else. Those are all things that can get into your head and therefore affect your performance. So comfort is a huge one. Up next for me was versatility, and there's two different ways that I was looking at that. Number one is versatility across different sports. I like to lift weights, I like to go boxing, occasionally I like to try BJJ, I like to go hiking, I like to run, I like to do a bunch of different forms of exercise, and what I do not want is a closet full of my running outfits and my weightlifting outfits and my boxing. I don't want that. I'm sure most of you don't want that. I want something that can go across all those different sports and work from a functional and an aesthetic perspective across all of those. And then the other thing from a versatility perspective for me is that I often do not just exclusively go to the gym. I may be going to the gym after going somewhere else, or I may be going to the gym before going somewhere else. And so I want something that I can still look stylish, look presentable, and not feel self-conscious about wearing if I'm doing something either before or after I go to the gym. It may be something as simple as grabbing a bite to eat or picking up groceries, or it may be something that's a little bit bigger of a deal, and I know that my own ability to feel strong and confident and powerful is impacted by the clothing that I wear, and so I wanted to have something that would look stylish even though I wasn't there in the weight room itself. And then the fifth component for me was it needed to be quality. I've had my fair share of cheap stuff and it's not worth it. I know that I arguably could say that I save money by picking up shirts from the outlet mall, and I've done that, but they start to pill, they stain more easily, they start to lose their shape, the threading comes out. I mean, they're at that lower price for a reason. Now, again, if that's the best you can afford, do it until you can afford better. But for me, the quality component of the cloth, the construction, that's a huge one, and so that is something that was up there on my priorities as far as looking for gym gear. Now, the things that didn't matter to me, because a lot of times knowing what you're not looking for is just as important as knowing what you are looking for. Those things that didn't matter to me were stuff like, it didn't need to be cheap. Again, going back to that other point, I don't need to spend $10 on a shirt because I value the quality of something more, and so I didn't have to worry about it being the best discount or the best deal. Now, does that mean that I'm spending $500 on workout t-shirts? Absolutely not. There's always a line there for everybody, but for me, cheapness was not necessarily a huge factor. Another one was branding. Just like I don't need to signal that I belong to a particular tribe, I don't need to be able to communicate with people that I'm a Nike guy or I'm an Adidas guy or that I'm an anything guy, because to me, within my gym gear, that doesn't matter. And then the third and final thing was that it didn't need to be flashy. In fact, it needed, like I said before, it needed to be neutral. Flashiness, if you're a rakish guy, flashiness can be a good thing. If you're really, really good within that particular skill set of a gym goer, whatever your particular athletic pursuit is, then flashiness can be a good thing, because the flashier you dress, the more attention you call to yourself. And usually you want to call attention to yourself only if you are an expert or a master within that particular realm. And again, I am not at the gym. I do not want to call attention to myself. I just want to be left alone to work hard, get my workout done, and get out and do other things. Now notice that with a lot of these things, these are opposite of how I am when it comes to my regular style. I like flashiness in my suiting when I'm in the right environment. I like tribalism and the things that are communicated with that when it comes to other components of my clothing and other environments in which I find myself. And so you have to be able to think about what your goals are and are not within this particular environment of the gym, and not just think about it in a general context. Okay, so I've walked you through this whole process, something that is applicable to you, something that you can get yourself through. And now I just want to tell you guys where I've landed, because if you find yourself with the same criteria that I have, maybe you will land where I did. Now, what I've found is really, really cool stuff from a company called Olivers Apparel. And before we go any further, I want to tell you that this is not a sponsored video. They're not paying me to talk about them. In fact, I'm the one who initiated the relationship with them. I grabbed a pair of their shorts a couple years ago, and the only reason I'm not featuring them in this video is because their design has changed enough since then that it's not really representative anymore. But I reached back out to them. I told them that I was still in this process of my evolution. I asked them if they didn't mind sending me some stuff, which they did. They sent me one of their convoy tees and a pair of their Bradbury joggers. And for me, this hits all of the things that I'm looking for. It avoids all the things that I'm trying to avoid. And these are the perfect gym clothes for me. I love this stuff. Now, when you look at what those different points are that I wanted to hit upon, you can look at things like the breathability and the functionality of the cloth or the way that it's constructed. For example, the tee has a reverse raglan sleeve, which makes range of motion quite a bit easier. It's a lot more breathable because of the way it's woven and the fact that it's made out of 100% merino wool, which, trust me, I know how weird that sounds to think about a t-shirt that is made out of wool and having that be a performance fabric, but when you put it on, it breathes really well, it wicks away sweat. I've loved having this merino wool t-shirt. Same thing with their joggers. They fit really well, they're stylish both in and outside of the gym. You get a lot of functionality out of them. They are culturally neutral, tribally neutral. They're not overly skinny, they're not overly baggy, they are nice and neutral in a good neutral tone, and they work well with my other stuff. I love that I can throw this t-shirt on over a pair of white chinos, or I can throw on the joggers with an OCBD or a chambray shirt, and things will look and work great. There's no visible branding anywhere on any of it, which keeps it neutral, and no, it's not cheap, but for me, the price on all this stuff is worth it. So if you're interested in checking these out, I've got a link for you below. It's an affiliate link, and so if you do decide that you want to pick up some of this stuff, I get a kickback, which win-win for us, right? But check their stuff out, and regardless of whether or not you like my particular aesthetic, regardless of whether or not you like these clothes, just go through that process of figuring out what your own style should be and think about it from a rational perspective. Think about it from a strategic perspective as opposed to just trying out different tactics, because those outfits that you saw me wearing earlier, those all came about from a tactical perspective. That was me trying to just adopt what the guys at the gyms I was attending were wearing, or the guys that I was working out with were wearing, because they recommended them based on particular things, and none of them actually worked for me. So I went from a reactive standpoint for my gym clothing to a very proactive one, and I'm very happy with where it's landed me. So again, whether or not you land on Olivers, which I recommend that you do, but whether or not you do, just go through this deliberate thought process and come up with your own style that way. All right, I want you guys to sound off below. I want you to tell me, have you been through a process similar to this? Has your gym style evolved like mine has? Do you feel like you've been stuck in a rut? Tell me what it's been like for you. Tell me, do you own some of Oliver's stuff? If so, do you like it as much as I do? Basically, as always, I just want to hear from you guys. I want to hear what you think about this thought process and if there's anything that I missed on it. Now, if you hear me say words like rugged, refined, and rakish, and you don't know what I mean by those, go check out this link right here. It's going to fill all those gaps in for you. If you want to watch more videos like this one, I've got links for you right here. And as always, if you are not yet subscribed, make sure you do that. Click that button here, leave me a comment, join the conversation with the community, and I will talk to you guys on the next one.